All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll start the session. I hope you can hear my voice loud and clear. I'll request all of you to remain muted. Your videos can be on. That's not an issue, but I'll request anyone who's joining in to keep yourself muted so that we have a flawless session. My name is Vignesh. I'm part of the CII MSME team. And at the outset, may I extend a warm welcome to all participants on behalf of CII to the CII online session for MSMEs on risk management in uncertain times, how to become anti-fragile. The webinars and online masterclasses are a very popular initiative of CII. Until date, we have done thousands of sessions since launch in 2009. More than a lakh of members have participated in these sessions, since launch in 2009. Now, CI understands the need of organizing such events, networking, and especially in this time of COVID that we're facing nationwide lockdown. And there is also CI Tech Saksham for MSMEs set up for MSMEs to become tech enabled and have the know-how of technology to come. And I would like to formally welcome Ms. Rosanna Terminio. She is a faculty for today's session. She is the managing partner of ACE Corp China Business Consulting, company based out of China, Europe, and other countries. She gives lectures on China-related and innovation topics in different business schools in China and abroad, among which the Jietong University GEPA program. She's also the vice chair of HR working group at the European Chamber of Commerce in China. Right. Thank you, Rosanna, for joining in. Now,
Thank you.
I'll request all the participants to remain muted while Rosanna's presentation is going on. And if you have any query, you can always queue in your query during at the chat window box which is there. And right after her presentation is over, we could take up a good Q&A time of half an hour or so, if that's okay with Rosanna. And and we could answer your questions there. So over to Rosanna to take over the session. I'll put on your deck. Yeah.
Thank you. So maybe you can share the presentation. And I will ask you to move on the slide. I hope you all can hear me clearly. So
Yes. Yes.
yes, great. Maybe we can go to the third slide,
Yeah.
which is the introduction of the topics we will be
Yes.
addressing today. Next one. Next slide is possible. Thank you. Thank you so much. So as you can see from this slide, what we are going to speak about during this presentation, it's related with which are the economic forecasts for China and the global economy, and why this matter, and how to face the challenges that the present outbreak will bring to the global economy, and starting from what happened in China, what we can do, and how the SMEs should face, according to their possibility, this crisis, and how to take this as a chance to improve for the future, also by identifying new opportunity. And we will see how the market trends that were actually already in place before this crisis happened could be further shaped and further, let's say, adopted. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello?
Rosanna. Yeah, we
Yes.
can hear you.
Yes, by the companies, and we will draft some conclusion and suggestion. Next. Next, so before going ahead, I would like to introduce you a bit myself. I'm an entrepreneur working in consulting since more than 10 years, related with strategy consulting and HR consulting in China. I am myself Italian, and my main expertise is related to strategy and HR consulting in China for European firms, mainly Italians and Spanish firms. And I will bring you some example of clients and other company, how they face and how they adapted themselves to this crisis. I am also particularly interested in the impact of robotic automation and generally speaking, the digital transition in work and in the organization. And I will introduce also a little bit of this. Next one. As introduced, and as you you have experienced by yourself, this crisis has significant impact in the world economy, not only because of the disruption of the global value chain, but also because this will bring a major challenge for many small, medium enterprises. But how the different companies and the management of the company will respond to the crisis can make a difference for the future and for the possibility to not only survive to the crisis, but to thrive. And actually, I was reading, I was thinking, and reading that this could be also a major opportunity for India, because the global value chain was mainly dominated by China. So all the supplies were let's say, the major supplier of the world was China. So this could be important chance for India, provided that there are some policies put into place, mainly in terms of infrastructures and labor force. So make the labor force up to date, and also the infrastructures. And this also means how the individual Indian firms can respond to this need, can bring a bigger opportunity for India, in fact. Next one. So in order to give you some tips on how to manage a crisis in general, and how to use this as a, let's say, as exercise for crisis management, I would like to start with what was the forecast of the global economy before the COVID outbreak. So as you can see, since a few years, and especially after the crisis in 2008, the global economy, excluding Asia Pacific, didn't really recover. And we were already facing, before the COVID crisis, major uncertainties with regard to the global growth, which has been actually this major trend has been made more serious by the outbreak, but it was already in place, especially due to the US-China trade war, some environmental problems, the transition to the electric vehicles, and new economic paradigms, especially due to the e-commerce. So the world economy was already in an uncertain growth, and what this crisis made is that it makes even more, the impact even more stronger. Next one. This is from the European Commission after the outbreak came out. What has been seen as the impact is that this will have a longer impact on not only the economy, but also on the society and the global manufacturing. So during these days, I guess you have been following also the development in the US and in Europe, and many are speaking about how to reshore productions so that the different geographies are not so dependent on other, but they could be more diversified so that they can better respond to future crises. And this also will have a major financial impact, especially for any kind of company, but especially for small, medium size companies, because their clients are reducing the demands, and their suppliers are also reducing the possibility to respond. So this way also the company are facing some major challenges due to cash flow problems as well. Next one. So at present, where are we? We don't know how this crisis will evolve. The forecasts are not positive. We will see later different case scenarios, but the more the time passes, the more we know that the possible outcome will not be that positive. Still, what we know for sure is that this will not last. It probably said that we will need to coexist with the virus until the vaccine is not identified, and also that we will need to adapt ourselves temporarily to live with it, to be able to start production again. But what we will know for sure is that this will disappear sooner or later. So after that, there will be a major opportunity for reconstructions and recovery. So that what we have to do now is to do our best to identify the opportunity and get ready to be there when the tide has passed and we can take chance of the opportunity that are waiting for us. But how can we do that? Next slide. So there is a major difference of what are crises. One of the author that I refer to when I speak about the word anti-fragile is Nassim Nicholas Taleb, which is an economist and a philosopher, and he's the one who has created the word black swan. So black swan is a crisis, but is a kind of unexpected event which was hard to be predicted and forecasted. In this case, he considered the COVID-19 not to be a black swan, but a gray rhino. So, which means that in fact, we were already informed in advance by reports, by the scientific community that this major crisis could happen, but it was not take measure in advance. Next one. So now what we have to do, we will see later the different stages of crisis management and crisis detection, but now we are already in the crisis stage. So what we have to do is try to find the best solution for our companies to face this crisis, and the relationship and support of internal and external stakeholder to detect the crisis before it happens, and when it happened to prepare and to plan for the recovery are very important. Next one. So the stakeholder, I know that the background of the participant is diverse, so I prepare these slides and this content in a more generic way. So if you have some specific questions, you can address me later in the Q&A session. But just in case some of you are not familiar with this terminology, I would like to explain what is a stakeholder, because this word will present again in the next slides. So stakeholder is different from shareholders. Shareholders is a kind of stakeholders, and shareholders are those who own the shares of the company. For stakeholder, we have internal and external stakeholders. Next one. I think this graphic can resume well what is internal stakeholder and external stakeholder. So we have employees, managers, and owner, which are internal stakeholders. And as a resume for external stakeholder, we have the customer, the supplier, shareholders in case the company is has shares in the stock market, creditors, government, and the whole society. So the society, for example, the community from the area where we have our company, to the whole society of the country or the global society. So all of this can be our stakeholders. And later, when I will explain about the case studies, you will understand why this detail I speak about is especially related with society is important. Next one. So this is how the assessment for the crisis management should be done. And as you can see from this slide, there is different steps. One is before the crisis, but this time, and even though let's say the potential risk was already announced, we are already in the crisis period, and in the future, the unpredictability of our environment, both in terms of geographical environment and also in terms of economies, will be more and more unpredictable. So we will need to get used to maybe not be able to detect the crisis in advance, and we will need to be more flexible and adaptable to respond, as it is in this case, to the crisis. Next one. So for the crisis threat, what we can do is to prepare some measure or some protocols that allow our organization to sense in advance some potential threats and to be ready to respond to this crisis and to mitigate the impact of the crisis. So this will need to be done taking into account the specific characteristics of each organization, but also, as we show before in the slide, the whole ecosystem of the company, which includes the internal and external stakeholders. Next one. For what is the, let's say, limitation that small and medium enterprise can face is to have a long-term vision. Most of the time, the let's say the attitude, at least based on my experience of small medium enterprises, is more proactive. So there is a stimulus or there is a need of the market, and based on the vision or the initiative of the leaders, of the owner of the company, there is a response. In order to be ready for managing a crisis, it is very important to try to act in advance. So be proactive and try to prepare in advance a plan. So it's like a plan B. So try to understand which could be the potential impact of a crisis, and also according to the technical capability, and this we will see later in some case studies example what this means actually, based on your own company structure and your technical capability and your condition to prepare a reaction to the crisis in this case, or a plan B in case a crisis you have identified as a potential risk could happen. Next one. So this is a resume of the steps of the crisis management. As mentioned, here we are in occurrence, recovery, and resolution. So we have these three stages now that we will experience. Now we have to plan, we will see later in details, for the cost reduction, targets, new targets, how to invest in leadership and identify the leaders to manage the crisis, innovation, and for the recovery, how to prepare or how to attract more employees, how to communicate with the different stakeholders from customer to supplier, and then go through the whole process in a dynamic way, try to learn while doing, and also make some conclusion in the resolution phase, what we have learned, what is our company situation, and how we can improve to face better the next crisis, but also to maybe be a better actor in our market. Next one. So it's very important, as we already mentioned, to be engaged as a leader, to be able to mobilize our team and all the other stakeholders, to be more agile. And this is actually an advantage of small medium enterprises, because small medium enterprises do not have a rigid hierarchy when it is necessary. Especially a very small company can act together in a more fluid way. So it's easier for the small company to be more flexible and adapt better during the crisis. But one of the weaknesses is that maybe the company is too flexible. So there are not formal procedures. And when the crisis just happened, having procedure is very important, because it helps to avoid thinking about some details, and it helps also employee to know what they have to do. So what can be done, taking advantage of the present experience, is trying to draft some procedure so that, for example, when the crisis happen or the next crisis happen, there are already some procedure in place, for example, to tell employee what they have to do, if they have to communicate, when they have to go to work or not, how to communicate this, to whom communicate, if the job task is to be changed, which is the new job task, which is the new content of each person, which are the procedure to communicate when, for example, working in remote. If there is any issue, which are the contact person that each employee has to refer to. Or, for example, if there is any major issue related to the regulation, who is the responsible person? And for the production or some other internal procedures, for example, the person that is usually in charge is holding personally the knowledge of the company, but maybe this person cannot work, or maybe this person is not easy to be reached. So if this happens, it will be necessary to start from scratch for the company to try to understand and learn how to do some procedure or how to operate some machine or some processes. So in this case, it's very important to have procedures, written procedure and formal procedures, so that in case it happens, another employee can just read through the procedure and know what they have to do. Next one. The other step is when the crisis happen, the first things that most of the company do is try to go to their budget, to their planning and forecast, and try to cut costs as much as possible, so that it will not impact significantly on the activities, including layoff of employees, redesign the purchase quantity, maybe close some of the facility, move office. But this should not be limited to cost reduction, and cost reduction should be balanced with other needs. Because the company not only need to reduce the cost, but need to be able to be operative. So in case they receive some requests, or they can, for example, transfer the production or adapt their production to respond to new market need, they will still need people, they will still need to make some investment and allocate resources. So it is very important not only to cut the costs, but also consider which cost is absolutely important to maintain, so that the company can not only survive, but can also continue to be operative when the situation will allow it. And eventually some costs which are related to make the company more visible and try to identify some new business opportunities, as well as innovate. And innovation does not only mean heavy investment in research and development, but innovation can also mean try to understand how to optimize some procedure or some processes, or how to train employees so that they can perform better, or they can acquire some new knowledge. So maybe in the beginning will be in additional investment, but that in the medium to long term will contribute to reduce the cost. Next one. So based on the previous introduction, I would like to give some suggestion on how to work on your crisis management plan. As you have seen before, I started with the economic forecast because of the coronavirus, before the COVID, and also try to understand how, from the previous situation, the new crisis impacted on the forecast. So what can be done as individual company is start from which was your budget or your forecasts, including sales forecast, before the crisis, before this virus impact. As we mentioned, the forecast, and it will depend on each country and each particular industry, in some area was not so positive already, in some other industry was more promising. So how your already existing plan and forecast can be impacted by this new situation, and try to identify some official information which are related to the market, to your own market. And I'm sure that the CII can also provide some specific market study related to your industry or to the forecast for the market, and then how these forecasts are impacted by the new situation, and try to place different scenarios. So we will see in the next few slides coming 3 different options. So how this option will affect your budget, and taking as a, sorry, again, the previous one, taking as a reference the different stakeholders. So how will this impact your client? How will this impact your suppliers? How will this impact in general the value chain, the raw materials, etc. And so based on different scenario, how do you contain the cost with the philosophy that you should not only cut the cost, but you should also able to operate, and how to manage the cash flow. So the also earning that you can make by cutting the costs, maybe it's worth to invest in the future. Based on how you react to the crisis with your whole stakeholder, with your whole environment, you will also affect the company reputation. So you need not only to cut the costs, but you need to protect also your profitability and ability to operate. Next one. So this case was, I think this is a case 1, is I think we can already consider this will not be the one to happen. So the first case consider is that the outbreak is contained, so that will be limited to the first quarter and mainly limited to China. So this could have had one impact, but unfortunately we go to the case 2. Next one. So we are now in a case 2 with an increasing global spread of the virus and a significant impact in the global economy and global supply chain. And also one of the biggest impact is the global economy and the US economy. And as we know, our global economy is very interdependent. So definitely there will be a significant impact. There will be a reduction of demands. There will be also some impact in the financial market. But as we already start seeing, many governments start to act with the stimulus and with different kind of support, both for the companies and for the workers. So the way that the government will act will be significantly important on how this crisis will impact on our company. So in this case, it's very important to, as I guess you all are doing already, to follow up with the updated policies, how to use these policies to get some financial support or some cost reductions. For example, in China, they provided some refund for social security contribution for the employees, and they have requested banks to provide a very low interest rate to the private company to get finance and to get help. And in Italy as well, there are increasing support for paying employees 80% of the salary, so that they can stay at home and the company don't have to face the burden. And as I guess you have heard, there is negotiation ongoing in the European Commission on how to support the recovery for the different European countries. So I guess India is doing something similar. So how to follow up what are the policies and the support that the government can provide to the company, and how to use this to define the impact on our business plan. Next one. The worst case scenario, and it seems is likely to happen, unfortunately, is a recession. So we will need to get ready to prepare our company to survive, and the best way to do this is, as I mentioned before, try to balance the cost reduction with the possibility to invest for our future, identify new opportunities, and we will see in the next slides some example of how other companies adapted to this crisis with very simple ideas. So no need to make a major investment. And what is very important is the relationship you have with all your stakeholders, including the employee, how you can engage them to support you in the business transition, and how you can also get support through the supplier and other actors, which are your resources within the company, that can help you to identify new opportunity and the new possibilities. Next one. So according to recent news from Harvard Business Review, as I advance, the recession is very possible, and there is a major hit on US economy. This will also affect the rest of the world, and there will be, as mentioned, financial imbalances. SME are probably those which will face cash flow constraint. Next one. And from another news, Asia Pacific also will be affected by this situation, of course. And it's very important to not lower the guard, because, as I mentioned before, this virus will stay with us for a while. So it's very important to take the right measure, not only in terms of country, but also in terms of company, to make sure that we are operative. As one example, the reason to protect the employee for sure is a responsibility. But on the other side, you also have to maintain your resources, your human resources, to be operative, to allow you to respond to the market need, even though there will be for sure a reduction in the demand, but still company can find some alternative option, or if the global recovery will start, even though slowly, there will be still some place for business opportunity, but without lowering the guard, because if we lower the guard, then the impact will go back to be significant, and then the impact on our economy will be even bigger. Next one. Oh, sorry, I have some issue with my. So the first things to do, as I mentioned, is try to balance and try to find a balance on your financial status. So manage cash flow first. Try to get as many outstanding payments as possible, as soon as possible, before that the situation becomes more serious. Reduce your financial dependence where possible. So pay a lot of attention what is your account receivable and account payable. Try to reduce the impact on the profit, whether possible, also considering the cost reduction. And identify which is the people that you need, the relevant, most relevant staff to make your company able to survive, but reducing the impact on human resources or the cost of the company based on human resources. Next one. Also try to understand the quality of the people and reporting system or the market demand, your flexibility. So try to work not only on the financial and let's say number parts or projection, but also take this chance to look at your people and how this can be, let's say, a chance to identify which are the leaders and which are the, how to say, the asset of each person, how to maintain your relationship or improve your relationship with the supplier and the customers, and also how to find new source of finance. Next slide. So for the recovery phase, through all this analysis and planning and case scenario playing, try to have a recovery plan and make action plan through the year. And this should be reviewed from time to time. So you need to pay attention to which are the evolution of this crisis, also which are the evolution of the policies to support the different kind of company, and include them in your plan and action plan. Identify the employee, and maybe when you have to restart, if you also adapt the production, try to identify how to, which kind of people you need, which kind of new resources you need in terms of employee, and also to keep working on all the network, shareholders, or all the stakeholders, supplier, vendors, client, to maintain your relationship, because that will be very important during and after the crisis. Next one. As mentioned before, learn. So try to see yourself acting to the crisis. We will all do many good things and mistakes. So try to identify what we can do better, and how we can use this learning to react to the next crisis, and also to identify which are the area of improvement in our company, and maybe use this experience to draft some protocol for the next crisis management. Next one. So yeah, that's as I advance, have a strategic plan. So learning process through the organization, some new product that could be developed, new market position, and keep learning, both as a company and for the employee, to be ready for new business opportunity or for the next crisis. Next one. One option could be also to overcome the crisis or improve the company, to outsource support, to have a third view from different specialists, also in terms of product, finance, or legal consultation, cooperate with university to develop new product, or to employ, for example, students, or give the opportunity to students. Monitor the changes of law, and as I mentioned, of the policies that can support the SME to get financial resources, but also very important to manage your cash flow through the relationship you cultivate with your suppliers and with your clients. So the way you also tell your finance people or accounting people to handle this relationship is very important. So maybe they will need also to acquire some skills if they do not have it. Next one. As a resume, so this is just a wake-up call, is a chance to learn, to get ready for the future, because as we have been already told, there will be increasing issue related to global warming, scarce resources, political and global and economic downturns. So we need to get ready to have a plan. And this is a good chance to test our company ability and to get ready to have our own plan to be ready for overcoming this crisis and the next ones. Next one. So for the prevention or preparation through market diversification, identify new opportunities.
Hello. I think we lost Rosanna just for a second.
No.
Um, just hold on. I think we lost Rosanna for a second. We'll try and get it back. Meanwhile, I'll request all the participants to just take a note of all the questions you have, and meanwhile, we'll get this glitch sorted. She's trying to log on back. Yeah, so there are some issues with her laptop, it seems. So she's joining back over phone. We're trying to see if we can get her back. Meanwhile, just for your information, to all the participants and the members, we have CI has a separate COVID-19 update website of its own, and that's CI COVID-19 update.in. You can always log on to that website and know all the details, all the updates which are coming through, the regular updates we send to the government as well, recommendations. If there are manufacturers of essential goods and all, you can also share information there. That's CII COVID-19 update. Okay, just a second. Rasana, we cannot hear you. No. You are unmuted. Maybe you could check your audio with the phone. Yeah,
Hello?
yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, great. Sorry for my sudden disappearing. I have an issue with my computer battery. I tried to restart, but it doesn't work. So I'm now on the phone. Sorry for that. So if you can share the, okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
Rosanna.
Thank you, sorry. So to start where I was before, try to identify opportunity to diversify your business, check your management ability through the crisis, and eventually identify which kind of a training they could need, innovation, and also in case you didn't do before, identify which area can be covered by insurance so that you will also have an additional financial support. Next one. Next slide. Yeah, so for getting ready to the next crisis through this experience, try to keep monitoring, as I mentioned, the evolution of the crisis and the new chances, new risk, and look at this situation and as your company as a part of a whole system, and how all this system can impact your budget, not only in terms of cost or revenue, but also in terms of how these relationships and how you can strengthen your network to get help through this crisis, but also to strengthen your company in the future. So have a leadership mindset, also well-established processes, as we mentioned, and try to think about a different way to solve the problems. Next one. Next slide. So these few slides, I will go a little more quickly so that you can have more time at the end for your questions. Here is just an introduction on what is enterprise risk management, how it works, and as I mentioned before, how to balance the different, let's say, the different aspects which are the risk, but also, for example, for cost reduction, but also which are the needs for growth and for further development. Next one. The risk management involve different areas and different aspects of the company business. So in this presentation, today we will mainly focus on what is the company strategy and what is related to the corporate culture and the company identity. But as maybe you know, there will be two more event, and one will be more related to leadership and human resources, and another one will be related to knowledge management. Next one. So one of the most important questions to answer to take this crisis as an opportunity is why your company exists. What is the drive? What is the purpose of your company? And what is the goal that you want to keep achieving through this crisis, and when you recover from the crisis? Next one. Simon Sinek described as a golden circle the different stages that brings the company to success. And the most important is the why, is the purpose. why the company do something, and this is what the customer buy. More and more companies compete on the same customer doing the same kind of product, which is the what. But why the company do this? Why? Which is their promise? Which is their corporate culture? Is what makes the difference for the customers. Next one. So many companies will compete on cost and will try to obtain the customers, and the customers will try to as well choose in this crisis situation maybe the cheapest solution, but it will not always be like that. And which is your mission, vision, and value of the company? Identify your corporate culture. And this, as we mentioned before, is what will contribute through the crisis, but also after the crisis, to keep your company reputation and also to make you achieve the medium to long-term result, and not only to survive. So for company that still had no chance to think in a more structured and formal way, which is their company culture, can use this crisis to answer this question. Next question, next slide. Also try to identify which are the competitive forces in your market. I think most of you will be are familiar with the Porter's 5 forces. So try to identify which are all the actors that act on your company and how to respond to that. So try to design a strategy not only to respond to the crisis, but also to look at the future and how to make your company stronger in this more competitive market. Next one. So identify what can make the difference for your company, what that you can offer to your supplier that is different from your, to your customer, that is different from what is offered by your competitors. So try to differentiate yourself, and maybe in a crisis, some of the solution could be also to join forces with the competitors to provide something different together. Next one. So try to identify through this crisis which can be the opportunity for the market, which can be the threat that we have also a little analyzed, trying to understand which could be the economic impact of this situation. And in this picture, try to find out which are the strengths of your company and which are the weaknesses, and especially for the weaknesses, how to invest to improve this part and become more strong for the future. Next one. So as Jack Welch mentioned, change before you have to. So now some of the company have been forced or will be forced to change. And we can use this opportunity to learn for the future how to what pay importance and how to improve ourselves. So next question, next slide. I want to share with you some example of case studies that resume what is the content we have been speaking about today. One of the company, and I took this example from news paper because of privacy issue. So in case of this company, they already prepare in advance to some diversification. So they diversified their business in advance, and this gave them the chance to shift most of the production to that other business because the automotive industry has been majorly affected. Next one. Another company, they produce hydraulic pumps. So they have a 3D machine to produce prototypes. since everything was stopped, and they wanted to contribute to support the hospitals in Madrid, which is one of the most affected city in Spain. They reprogrammed the 3D printer machine that was used to make prototypes to produce these shields for the doctors to be given to the health center and nursing homes. So they have use one resource that they have already in the company that was used sometime for prototyping, now is full-time used for producing this product. Next one. This is another company. I cannot share the name because they asked me to be anonymous. So the manager of the company had a previous experience in China. So she keep contact with the friends in China. So she learned in advance about the situation. And even before the crisis started in Italy, she already started to search for masks, thermometers, and sanitizer, which was what the Chinese authority requested to the company to be able to start production. So in China, all the production has been stopped, and the authority would give you authorization to start producing again only if you could provide safety and control measure of the temperature to the employees, and you have to check employee temperature at least 2 times per day, and you have to report directly to the authorities. So in China, the control has been moved to the private company. Since she was already in touch, still in touch with the friends in China, she learned about these practices. So she moved in advance, and she could collect some material before they start to become scarce in Italy. And also she tried to mobilize her network. Now they produce also some masks. So she was able to connect through the local network and identify some potential suppliers of materials and also some potential clients. And when the regulation started in Italy, she already prepared, give training to the employee based on what learned in what was done in China. When the production was stopped in Italy, only some companies that have a specific industry code could operate. And actually they are in the medical textile, so they would be allowed to operate, but the company sector code they were registered officially was a generic one. And if you have to apply, there is a long procedure, and you have to maybe apply for a new code. It will take time for them to be operative. So even though she was ready, she could not operate because the company code she was registered at the chamber was not in the list allowed. So she found an alternative solution. Since the people that were supposed to control the company is the police, she explained the whole situation to the police, and she got authorization. So she can go through, she will still go through the normal approval procedure, but temporarily she can use this police authorization to operate. Next one. This is a case that has been explained in a TV. So this is a fish supermarket and a restaurant. They could not operate, of course, and also they have no, is a restaurant they can receive about, according to the news, 200 people. So they have been blocked, and since the people cannot go out, they cannot work, they don't have business. So the owner wanted to save the business, and he realized, so again, based on resources, and which is the company condition, he realized that the sanitation request or the sanitation requirement he had to got approval for the fishing supermarket were the same to produce medical masks. So he purchased a production line to produce medical masks, and now they are working 24 hours. Not only he could save the employee, but he also had to hire new people. And here what we can see is really important. He turned some waiters and fishermen into producing some different product. For sure, from one side, the worker is, let's say, happy to keep working. But from the other side is an example of a leadership. He could motivate the people to a new, different business, definitely because they trusted in him. Next slide. This is another case of a very small company. They were producing clothes and they were stopped, and most of the employees they have to dismiss. So they have the problem to find masks for themselves. So they start to try to find a way to produce masks for themselves with the materials they have on hand. And suddenly they see the opportunity to produce masks for the community, because there was this important shortage of masks in Italy. So they ask help to a friend which works for a bigger firms, which is a manufacturing firm, and still have some workers in the production line. So they try to produce a different product, and now this product is sold in a major supermarket chain in north of Italy for the people that have to go to buy the food in the supermarket. It's not a medical mask, but is a protective mask for the people that have to go to buy the food. Thank you. Sorry, next one. This is another case. To produce masks with the fabric which is made for the diving suit. This is also a small firm. They were stopped production and they cannot receive any orders. So they were trying to find ways to make the company survive. And since the owner, as you can read, is a blood donor, he saw the opportunity in the hospital. So he considered that the fabric they used to produce the diving suit could be fabric that could be used for masks. So they have one machine that was cutting the parts for the diving suit. They use the machine to design a simple prototype of mask, and then they reprogram the machine to laser cut this mask. So this is another example of using what you have to do something different. And some other more famous case is like, for example, Fiat Chrysler. They also producing a machine to donate, Lamborghini as well, and one of the first in the textile field which converted themselves to produce for the medical field and to donate is Armani. So this is a way, especially for big firms, to show their contribution to the society, and so this will strengthen their brand. So now they cannot produce their major product, but they are using this opportunity to promote their brand, doing some good, social good. Next one. So as a conclusion, do not wait for a crisis for anticipating the trend. I see one of the questions going on the screen, which was related to the impact of automation. Actually, the impact of automation is one of my personal interest, but was not the topic of this specific let's say, to this specific presentation. But what is related with this crisis impact is that one of the trends which was already ongoing is the digitalization and increasing both automation of the production and also of a digital system that can allow people to work remotely. So what has happened here in China, in Italy and Spain is that companies were forced to make people work from home. but this means that some company had to provide devices, and they had to rush to find a solution, like for example what we are using now to make meetings and conferences, but there was no protocol on how to work remotely. There was no record on how to register your presence online if you're, let's say, formally start working from what time to what time. And also it's not the same to run a team remotely with some, let's say, structured way to make the team meet, to communicate remotely, to create engagement, than just give them a laptop and ask them to work remotely. So this is, let's say, companies have been forced to do that, but this was already a trend. And if companies that have followed the trend within their possibility, they were already ready to work remotely. So what we can take as an advantage is that we can learn from this crisis how to start to formally implement some remote working in our company also after the crisis. So this is like the mentioned, do not wait for the crisis to make some changes. If you follow the trends, industry trends, then maybe your company could be already ready for adapt itself to new market demands and also for the crisis. So the same is for the diversify the portfolio and the client. So try to understand which are the trends, and also try to understand which is the market and the client needs. As those companies have done, some of them is producing something totally different, even though they are using their own resources. Invest in quality people that can make the difference during the crisis. So try to identify which people can also help you for the future, and based on how they reacted during the crisis. Keep the right relationship with your stakeholders. And as I mentioned, maybe some of the things that you were considering as part of your strategy, but that you have postponed because they were not necessary, as example, automating the production, online presence, or how to invest in your brand reputation, maybe now become urgent priorities. Next one. So these are some of the comments and a suggestion on how to make the company not only resist at this crisis, but how to use the chance to understand better your company and where you have to invest to make it anti-fragile, so more strong after this shock. Some references here of bibliography that you can check if you are interested to go read deeper about how to handle the crisis, which I've been using for my content. And I think that's all. Thank you so much. And I hope you find this interesting, and I'm ready for your questions.
Thanks, Rosanna. I think we could take up some of the questions which you would have been seeing on the chat as well. So there are some questions which have already come across. You've talked about IoT and automation, which I've already addressed. This recent question from Mr. Venkat Subramaniam. If you could take this up, how to address committed deliverables to stakeholders in the case 2 crisis situation.
Sorry, I'm reading the question. So how to address the committed deliverables to stakeholder in this case 2?
Yeah.
Well, this is a hard question because it will depend which are the committed deliverables. So, and to which stakeholder we are speaking about. So there is maybe the shareholders. Shareholder have some expectation on revenues. Employees have some expectation on company prosperity and their job. Customers, they have other expectation, and maybe customers now are not more in need of what were the commitment, and some other customer maybe might have problems to receive the commitment because the company production is stopped, and also suppliers maybe to receive the payment. So my suggestion is, as I mentioned during the presentation, to use this chance to cultivate your relationship with your different stakeholders. So as far as you can, try to reach or maintain some of the commitment where it is possible. Give explanation, transparency, try to explain what is the situation, and which are the measures and steps you are going to take in order to be able, if not immediately in the future, to respond or to maintain the promises. And also keep contact and keep the relationship, and try to show some initiative, both to maintain the relationship and to try to find a solution. I think is a, let's say, major shock that everyone is suffering. So they cannot ask something which is impossible to reach. What is important is to be transparent, to give information and be transparent what one is doing. And I don't know if in India there is this option, but for example, for the clients, for the impossibility to respond to the client demand, in China they have this, you can apply for force majeure certification. So this will, at least from a legal perspective, will justify that you are not able to deliver what you promise contractually, but I'm not sure how it works in India. Some other question?
Yeah, this question from Mr. Arjun Das: how can SMEs tackle the problem of increasing unemployment?
Sorry, I cannot hear you.
How can SMEs tackle the problem of increasing unemployment, which will be an obvious result of cost reduction post-lockdown?
Yes. So I think this SME cannot face alone. There must be some necessary support from government. This is happening the same in Italy and in China. But among the options which are provided, try to identify which, if possible, also agreeing with employee, if it's possible to maybe maintain as many jobs as possible, reducing the working time, but this will depend on the regulation on labor force. If this is not possible, identify which are the company needs, as I mentioned before, not only for the present, but for the future, and if you can cut on other costs. For example, I can give the example of my own firm. We are 10 people. We also expect to be impacted by this situation, but as a consulting firm, as our main asset is people. So we prefer to have a smaller office. We will move to a different location. So we will reduce the impact of our office rental, and this will allow us to maintain all the staff with the present pipeline of project. Even though we do not get any new project with this cut, we can go ahead this year and bring new project because we have people that can work on it. So it really depends on each company situation, and if there is alternative cost cut that is not employee, depending on your company needs, maybe is a better alternative than dismissal.
Right. There's a question coming in from Dr. Alka Kaul. If you would like to take that up. So she's mentioning this was an there's a question on WhatsApp where a member is asking, like, what were some of the opportunities available with small businesses in China when they were facing this COVID situation. Like, were they able to explore new markets? Were they able to collaborate globally? Look out for new clients, and in lieu, also were they able to cut their cost? So,
So
any
I'm
references
not
from China?
sure. I'm not sure if I understood clearly the question. So I repeat. So if in China
Yeah,
during the COVID crisis, there has been some opportunity for small medium enterprises,
yeah.
and
So, were those small businesses, were they able to explore new markets? Were they able to collaborate with global markets still then? Were they able to find new clients still then?
okay. So based on what I saw, there is two different stages. First stage is when everything started, and out of China, we have been a little like observer before. So in China was a major shock, and everything just stopped. The people and company were a bit in a shock, and then the government forced them to stop working. So during that phase, there was not any opportunity because the emergency requested the company to be operative, to have masks and some other measures of safety and protection for the workers, for the employee. So especially small medium enterprises had difficulty in allocating these resources. Big company had international networks, so from the other companies let's say units in different country, they could receive this material. But for local or international small medium firm was not easy. So the first activities that was done was try to go back into operation as fast as possible. And then in the next stage is company try to cooperate to provide, as it's happening in Italy now, try to cooperate to respond to the needs of the market in this moment, to face the crisis and provide the materials which are in major needs, respirator, masks. And now, since China is starting operating again, they are more working on a reconstruction on the local market, and for international market, there's a trading opportunity. So they start to find some options for new product trading, and especially masks, even some people's masks or other medical devices. So even some people which were not in that trading business, they are starting trading with different countries for medical devices. So for the, let's say, their own traditional business, most of a company is waiting to see how the situation evolves out of China. And within China, they are working on the domestic market. So for example, for Italy, there was another question, but sorry, I forgot. You mentioned something about China and then Italy. But the
No,
part
so that was just particularly for Italy, China. That was for China.
okay, so
Yeah.
China, this
There's
is.
another question coming in. Should we de-hire or reduce the pay of employees in this crisis? Should
Okay,
we
so
reduce the
this
pay of employees?
really depends on the policy in China, because, sorry, in India.
In India,
Because,
yeah.
for example, in China, they release some specific policies for this. So you have, they prefer you to reduce the pay. So for example, if you can prove that this person is not working, or that the company is not operative for more than 1 month, you do not have to pay the salary unless just the salary necessary to cover basic expenses. So the company has to prove this situation, and the government allow just to pay the basic salary to the employee to avoid massive dismissal of people. Another option is to negotiate with the employee, and many companies did, to negotiate with the employee salary reduction. And in most of the cases, the employees agree because they know it's a general situation and it's a way to both keep the company alive and keep their situation stable. But this really depends on the official regulation in India, what these allow India to do, Indian companies. And in Italy, for example, and also Spain, have the government, as I mentioned, they allow the company to ask employee to stay at home. The government cover 80% of the salary. And companies, some of the company, if they want, they still pay the 20%. Yeah.
Right. I'll allow one video question as well. Polybond insulation, Mr. Putnagar, he's our MSME council member as well. Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Loud and
Yes.
clear. Yeah.
Can you hear? My question is, when today we are all closed, but when we will be starting, what are the procedure, what are the guidelines has been established in other countries like China, who has started. So all precautions and safety we can take, and how to start, is there any guideline which will be better for the industry? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your question. So
Are you getting my point?
Sorry?
Yes, sir, I think
thank you
the
for your
question
question.
is clear. Yeah.
Yes, I can hear you. Let's say that the situation is a bit different in China because they had this happening during the Chinese New Year holiday. So what they did was extend 1 week the holiday. And so the company were already closed. And what they did is to ask the company, if you want to be operative, you need to grant this kind of, let's say, safety measure. So they shift to the company the responsibility to monitor the health of the worker and to report the health of the workers to the authority. So the measures used in China is the strictest one. They required the company to be sanitized totally before the people enter in the company. All have to wear masks and protective dress. And the person responsible in each department and in HR should monitor every day when the people enter and during the day the temperature of the people. So if the person has, let's say, 37 degrees, they have to be accompanied in one room, and they will be monitored the temperature during the day. If the temperature is stable and go below 37, they can go home, and they will be asked to monitor themselves for the next day. And if the temperatures go up, they need to rent a car, a taxi, and this taxi need to bring the employee to the hospital, to the fever hospital. So in China, there was specific hospital to take care of the COVID cases, which is similar in Italy. I guess the same will be in India. So only when the company was able to show all these protocol, must have been written protocols, and that they can provide 3 masks per employee every day, they would be allowed to restart by the government. So many companies already start working since the middle of February in China. So actually from the company side, there is not a major difference now. They need to keep monitoring. And what has been different now in China is that they are allowing slowly the people that were blocked into different provinces to come back. And they are opening now restaurants and other locations which were closed before, but the industries were still operative. And actually the basic industries related with food or food logistics or medical devices, they never closed. So this is the case in China. For Europe, so they gradually, because of the spread of the virus, companies keep working. And I had cases of both clients and friends that even though there is no protection materials, they had to go to work. So there's major negotiation between all social parties, and the industry and the syndicates reach an agreement on how to handle the situation. So as I mentioned, some list of companies and industries are allowed to be operative. Others are all closed, but they have to grant the safety measure. Based on what I have learned, both from clients and from interviews I did, there is not such strict requirement as in China to have written protocols. There is a guideline, but the companies, they, for example, do by themselves some posters, trainings by themselves. What they have to make sure is they have masks and that all the employees are wearing the mask. They are monitoring the temperature, but there is not a strict requirement from, let's say, from the government for comprehensive and formal protocols as it is requested in China. For the other companies that will start to go back into operation, probably it will be similar, at least for Europe. So what is to be expected, and that what they are announcing here, is the social distancing, so keeping the distances also in the factory, 1 meter distance, keeping the distances, and wearing the mask will become the new normal for a while, even in the manufacturing facilities. So for here in Italy, they are speaking about the second stage of the crisis management. Since the numbers are reducing, they are preparing for the second stage, and the second stage is considered to be this: keep social distancing and wearing the masks.
Right. So in case members have more questions, you could plug it in the chat box, and we could take maybe one more, and then we could wrap it up. There was a question on force majeure.
So I'm reading some questions, but they are a little specific on India and some circulars.
Yeah, that's from the legal side. Yeah, yeah.
So I think I'm not.
Yeah. So someone from, I think Ms. Vandana, someone from the CA and a CA person in India or legal consultant would be able to help you with that. Right, we'll wait for a few more seconds if there are no questions, we'll wrap it up. Meanwhile, there was a question on the presentation. So the presentation will be uploaded, the recording will be uploaded, sorry, on CII-techsuction.in in about a day or so. So you could be updated on CII-techsuction.in. We'll share with you an email as well on that.
Oh, there is one question maybe I can answer, one last, related to China. So why do I think it has not spread into other provinces? Majorly, let's say the major impact has been in Wuhan. I was there when it happened. So I was living the crisis in China. Now I'm living the crisis in Italy. And I can, let's say, in spite of the difficulties, it's a great chance for learning, because I can compare the two reactions. And one of the reasons why I think it has not spread into other regions, I think there is two parts. One part is, if we could call it like that, luck, because it happened during Chinese New Year. So it has been one of the biggest reason of the impact is the major traveling during Chinese New Year. But at the same time, as I mentioned, the company were already closed. So there was already company closure, and they extended the holidays 1 week. And during this time, they blocked the transportation. They didn't allow the people to travel. Most of the cities were in lockdown. And in Shanghai, which is a major city of between the whole region, Shanghai area, 28 billion inhabitants. Most of the people are immigrants. So the city was almost empty as usually for the Chinese New Year holiday, because most of the people were back with their family in their different region. So they stopped, gradually they stopped the transportation, they blocked the cars, the roads, and they start to reduce significantly the mobility of the people. They could not go out of the home in most of the places, only for a necessity reason. Everybody had to wear the mask. So as many said, is possible that they decide to give up one region to save the rest of the country. And we can believe or not in the numbers, but still I was there in Shanghai when it all happened. And if we can measure this by the noise of the, sorry, I don't know the word in English, but the hospital, the cars that bring you to the emergency, for a city as Shanghai, ambulance, thank you so much. For the ambulance, I could not hear, apart from a few days, as many ambulance ringing during the day as it is supposed to be in case of a major impact. So I think I can trust the numbers based on this indicator. And I think that they have been very quick and tough in responding on the containment and locking the people at home. I was very scared at that time because we didn't know that much about the virus either. But now that I'm in Italy and I see that maybe our way to respond in Europe is maybe a bit slower, I think that there is no other way to face this without a vaccination than be more strict with the containment.
Right. I think that fairly answers, and thank you for sharing your experience, Rosanna, from China and Italy both. Now, on behalf of the participants, I would like to thank you for taking this session. We look forward for more such sessions, and thank you, participants, for joining in. On behalf of CII, we'd like to thank you. If you have more questions for Rosanna, you can always drop us an email. The email which came to you while registering, you can always reply us back. We'll take it up with Rosanna offline. And the presentation or the recording will be uploaded on CITechSaksham.in. You can stay updated there. CII has a separate helpline, CII COVID update 19.in. You could go on there, look on various resources and the updates which are following with the economy. There's a lot of work which CII is doing. There's a relief fund also which you may like to contribute to or be part of, engage yourself. So go on to CII COVID-19 update. Thank you. We'll wrap up this session. You may like to exit, and thank you, Rosanna. Thank you for joining.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.